I still remember the day I believed I had the perfect life. It was a normal evening, the kind you don't think will change anything. The kitchen smelled like warm food. The soft sound of dishes being placed on the table filled the room, and my husband, yes, the man I trusted more than anyone in this world, was sitting across from me, smiling like nothing in the world could ever go wrong. If only I had known. That smile was hiding everything. A secret life, a second truth, and a betrayal so deep, it would take me months to even understand it fully. At that moment, I wasn't thinking about danger. I wasn't thinking about lies. I was thinking, I am lucky. But life has a strange way of proving you wrong. Slowly, quietly, until it's too late to pretend you didn't see it coming. We were that couple people called perfect. Friends used to say, "You two are goals. He treats you like a queen. You are so lucky to have him." And I believed it too. We had normal fights, sure, but nothing serious, nothing alarming. He used to come home on time. He used to hold my hand in public. He used to call me during lunch breaks just to ask, "Did you eat?" Small things, but they felt real. That's the trap of betrayal. It never starts with cruelty. It starts with comfort, with trust, with routine, with love that feels safe. And that safety is exactly what blinds you. It didn't happen suddenly. It started small, so small that I almost laughed it off. He began keeping his phone face down. Not always, just sometimes. Then, sometimes became often. Then, often became always. When I entered the room, he would quickly lock the screen. And if I asked, he would smile and say, "Work stress. Nothing important." I believed him, because trusting someone you love feels easier than questioning them. But deep inside, something shifted. Not loudly, just a quiet feeling, like a voice you try to ignore. Then came the late nights. He started coming home later than usual, sometimes 9 p.m., sometimes 11, sometimes after midnight. And every time I asked, he had a story ready. Office meeting ran late. Client emergency. Traffic was insane. And I, like a fool in love, kept nodding. Because love makes excuses sound reasonable. But what I didn't know then was that truth always leaves traces, even when someone tries hard to hide it. One evening changed everything, even though I didn't realize it at the time. He came home later than usual again. But something was different. His shirt smelled faintly like perfume. Not mine, not familiar. Something soft, floral, chouge. I remember freezing for a second. Just a second. Then I told myself, maybe he stood near someone at work. I even laughed at my own suspicion, because I didn't want to become that person who doubts everything. But sometimes, doubt is not paranoia. It is awareness arriving late. After that day, the phone became a wall, not just a device, a barrier. He started taking it to the bathroom, even during dinner, even while watching TV, even while lying next to me in bed. And when I asked why, he said, "Work is getting intense. I can't ignore messages." But here's what I didn't realize. People who are honest don't protect their phones like secrets. They leave them on tables. They leave them unlocked. They don't panic when notifications appear. But he did. Every time. And I told myself again, maybe I'm overthinking. That phrase, overthinking, is dangerous because it stops you from seeing what's right in front of you. Then came something worse than lies. Distance. He was still physically there, but emotionally, he wasn't. Our conversations became short. Our laughter disappeared. Even his good morning felt automated, like something he was required to say, not something he wanted to say. One night I asked him, "Are we okay?" He smiled without looking at me. "Of course, Why wouldn't we be? But his voice didn't match his eyes, and for the first time, I felt like I was sitting next to a stranger wearing my husband's face. I almost left him then. I really did. But something stopped me. Not love, not hope. Something worse. Fear of being wrong. Because what if I was imagining things? What if I destroyed my own marriage over nothing? So instead of walking away, I stayed. And staying was the first step toward discovering everything. It happened on a normal morning. He left his laptop open, just for a few minutes, and I wasn't planning to look. I swear I wasn't. But something on the screen caught my eye. A message preview. Just a few words. Nothing dramatic. Nothing obvious. But enough to freeze my entire body. It said, "Last night was amazing. When will I see you again?" I stood there, unable to breathe properly, because in that 1 second, everything I believed about my marriage started breaking apart. Slowly, quietly, irreversibly. And I had no idea yet. This was only the beginning. That message stayed in my mind like a stain that wouldn't wash out. Last night was amazing. When will I see you again? At first, I tried to convince myself there was another explanation. Maybe it was a work message. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe it wasn't even meant for him. But deep down, I already knew the truth. I just wasn't ready to accept it. Because once you accept something like that, your whole world changes. And I wasn't ready for my world to collapse. Not yet. That afternoon, I did something I never thought I would do. I checked his laptop again. My hands were shaking. Not from anger, but from fear of what I might find. I told myself, if there's nothing, I'll forget it forever. But that's the thing about truth. Once it starts showing itself, it never stops halfway. I clicked through his files slowly. Normal things at first. Work documents, spreadsheets, emails. Nothing unusual. Then I saw it. A folder named something simple. Updates. That name alone should have been harmless, but something in me told me, open it. So I did. And what I saw inside made my stomach drop. Inside that folder were photos, not work photos, not casual pictures, intimate ones, of him, with someone else, smiling, laughing, holding hands like they had known each other forever. My breath stopped. My mind refused to process it. Because this wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a second life. Carefully built. Carefully hidden. And I had been living beside it. Completely unaware. I clicked one image after another. And then I saw her face clearly. She wasn't a stranger. That made it worse. Because I had seen her before. At social events. At small gatherings. Someone I smiled at. Someone I trusted as just an acquaintance. And now, she wasn't just someone I knew. She was part of my husband's secret life. My hands started shaking harder. Not just betrayal, but humiliation. Because I had been standing next to both of them, without knowing. I opened the chats, and I wish I hadn't, but I couldn't stop myself. The messages were casual, too casual. Like this wasn't wrong to them, like I didn't exist. Can't wait to see you again tonight. She's working late, we're safe. I miss you already. Every line felt like a knife, not because of what they said, but because of how normal it sounded. Like I was the outsider in my own marriage. Strangely, the worst part wasn't even the cheating. It was something deeper. They weren't hiding because they were afraid. They were hiding because they didn't care. That realization hurt more than anything else. Because betrayal hurts, but indifference destroys. And in that moment, I realized I wasn't just cheated on. I was erased. I closed the laptop slowly. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't throw anything. I just sat there, completely still. Because when your entire reality collapses, your body doesn't know what to do first. It just freezes. And in that silence, a new version of me was forming. Not the wife. Not the trusting partner. Something else. Something quieter. Something dangerous. I didn't think about revenge immediately. That's not how it starts. First comes shock, then pain, then disbelief, then silence. And after that, a strange clarity. Because once you lose everything you believed in, you stop being afraid of losing more. That was the moment I understood something important. I didn't want to react. I wanted to understand. And understanding was the first step toward control. That night, I acted normal. I cooked dinner. I smiled when he came home. I asked how his day was, and he answered like nothing had happened. Like he wasn't living a double life. Like I wasn't sitting across from a stranger. But inside me, something had already shifted permanently. Because now I knew the truth. And knowledge changes everything. Even silence becomes powerful when it is intentional. That night, after he fell asleep, I didn't cry. I didn't break down. I did something else. I picked up my phone, and I started saving everything. Screenshots, messages, photos, every single piece of truth. Because deep down, I knew one thing clearly now. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. This was about what I would do next. And I was no longer the woman who didn't know. I was the woman who was preparing. Quietly. Carefully. And without him ever noticing. The next morning felt strange. Not because anything outside had changed, but because I had changed. The sun still came through the window the same way. The kitchen still looked the same. Even he still acted the same. He kissed my forehead before leaving for work, smiled like nothing had happened, said, "I'll be late tonight, don't wait up." And I nodded, like I always did. But inside me, something had already split in two. One part of me was still playing the role of his wife. The other part was watching him like a stranger. That day, I made a decision. If he could live a double life, then I could live a double face. To him, I would be normal, calm, loving, predictable. But behind that, I would start learning the truth, piece by piece, without him ever noticing. Because the worst thing you can do to someone hiding a secret is let them believe they are still safe. I didn't rush. I didn't confront. I didn't accuse. I observed. I started paying attention to everything. The time he left the house, the excuses he used, the days he was too busy, the sudden changes in mood. And slowly, a pattern started to appear. It was never random. It was organized, careful, predictable. That's when I realized something terrifying. This wasn't an accident. This was routine. There was always a gap, a small window of time where he disappeared. Sometimes 2 hours, sometimes 3, sometimes more. He called it office work. But no office works like clockwork at the exact same emotional hours. Always evenings, always Fridays. Always when he said he had extra pressure. Too consistent to be coincidence. Too perfect to be honest. And I began marking it all down. Quietly. In a notebook he would never see. One evening, I noticed something important. He was careless. Just for a moment. He left his phone on the couch while going to the shower. Normal people wouldn't think twice. But I did. Because now I wasn't normal. I was alert. I picked it up. My hands were steady this time. No shaking. No fear. Just focus. And I saw it. Notifications. Hidden messages. Short previews that told me everything I needed. Names saved under fake contacts. Conversations that disappeared after reading. And one recurring contact name. L. Just one letter. But that one letter was enough to confirm everything I already knew. This wasn't imagination anymore. This wasn't suspicion. This was confirmation. I had proof now that there was someone else. Someone he wasn't just talking to, but actively hiding. And worse, he was careful enough to make sure I never saw it. That level of planning doesn't come from guilt. It comes from confidence. He believed I would never find out. That thought alone hurt more than anything else. That night, I sat alone in the kitchen. The house was quiet. Too quiet. And I remember thinking, how long has this been going on? Not in anger, not in rage, but in calculation. Because betrayal changes how you think. It stops being emotional first and becomes analytical. You stop asking, why did you do this? And start asking, how long has this been happening behind my back? That's when I decided something important. I wouldn't rush revenge. I wouldn't explode. I wouldn't give him the satisfaction of reaction. Instead, I would build something he couldn't escape from. Proof. Clear. Undeniable. Because emotions can be denied. But evidence cannot. And I was going to collect everything. Silently. Patiently. Until the moment was right. Over the next few days, I began connecting dots. Late nights matched certain locations. Deleted messages matched specific times. And then, I found something even bigger. A second email account. One he never used at home. One he thought I would never access. Inside it were receipts, hotel bookings, dinner reservations, messages confirming meetings, all linked to the same hidden life. And suddenly, the illusion of my marriage didn't just crack. It collapsed. But here's what surprised me the most. I wasn't crying anymore. I wasn't breaking down. I wasn't even panicking. Instead, I felt calm. Strangely calm. Because now I knew something he didn't. I had the truth. And once you have the truth, you are no longer the person being deceived. You become the one holding the power. And that power was just beginning to wake up. I told myself I wouldn't go too far. I told myself I would stay calm. Collect proof. Stay patient. Wait for the right moment. But that night, something inside me shifted again. Because he came home later than usual. Not just late, different late. The kind of late that doesn't feel like work. The kind of late that feels like a life you're not part of. He didn't look at me properly when he walked in. Didn't sit for dinner. Didn't ask about my day. Just said, I have to go out again. Important meeting. And that was it. Something in his tone confirmed everything I already suspected. So I made a decision I never thought I would make. I followed him. I waited 5 minutes after he left. Then I took my keys. My hands were steady, but my heart wasn't. This wasn't just curiosity anymore. This was truth hunting. I didn't even fully know what I would do if I saw something. But I knew one thing. I couldn't stay in the dark anymore. So I drove. Slowly. Keeping distance. Watching his car ahead of me like it belonged to a stranger. And in a way, it did. At first I thought maybe I was wrong. Maybe he really was going to work. But then, he didn't take the usual road. He turned away from the business district, away from his office, away from everything he claimed. and headed somewhere else, somewhere unfamiliar. My stomach tightened, because truth has a feeling before it has proof, and I could feel it coming. He parked outside a small cafe, not fancy, not professional, a quiet place, dim lights, soft music, the kind of place people don't go for meetings, the kind of place people go for secrets. I stayed in my car, watching, waiting. And then I saw her, the same woman, the one from the photos, the one from the messages, the one I had tried to convince myself wasn't real. She walked toward him like she belonged there. No hesitation, no awkwardness, just familiarity. And when they met, they didn't greet like strangers. They greeted like something far more dangerous, like they had done this many times before. He smiled at her. Not the polite smile he gave me. Not the controlled one he used in public. A real smile. Comfortable. Easy. Alive. And I sat there in my car, watching the man I trusted most in the world become someone else completely. That's when it hit me. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't confusion. This was a second life he chose. For a second, I almost drove away, because watching it was unbearable. Not because of what they were doing, but because of what it meant. I wasn't part of his world anymore. I was outside of it, looking in. But something stopped me. Not anger, not jealousy. Something stronger. Clarity. Because now I wasn't guessing anymore. I was witnessing. And witnessing gives you power. I stayed longer. And I saw everything. The way they leaned toward each other when they talked. The way she touched his arm casually. The way he didn't move away. The way time seemed different around them, like they existed in a space I was never allowed into. And slowly, a question formed in my mind. Not, is this real? That question was already answered. The real question was, how long has this been going on? I left before they did. I didn't want him to see me. Not yet. Not like this. I drove home in silence. No music. No tears. Just thoughts. Too many thoughts. And when I got back into the house, I did something unexpected. I didn't cry. I didn't confront him. I didn't react at all. Instead, I wrote everything down. Every detail. Every moment. Because now I understood something important. Emotion would not win this. Strategy would. That night, I looked at myself in the mirror. And I didn't recognize the woman staring back. She wasn't broken. Not anymore. She wasn't confused. Not anymore. She wasn't waiting. She was building. And for the first time, I understood what this had become. This was no longer about love. This was about truth. And truth always finds its ending. Before sleeping, I opened my notebook again. And under everything I had written so far, I added one final line. Now I know where it happens. Because knowing the place meant I was no longer guessing. It meant I could plan. It meant I could prepare. And it meant, the next time I saw them together, I wouldn't be watching from a distance. I would be ready. That night felt different. Not outside. Everything looked normal. The same quiet house. The same ticking clock. The same man sleeping beside me like nothing had ever happened. But inside me, nothing was normal anymore. Because once you see the truth with your own eyes, you can never unsee it. And once you can't unsee it, you stop being the same person. I lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to his breathing. So peaceful, so unaware. And I realized something chilling. He still thought I was the same woman. The one who trusted him. The one who believed his lies. The one who would never look too closely. He was wrong. I didn't sleep that night. I planned. Not emotionally, not impulsively, but carefully. Because revenge isn't loud in the beginning. It's quiet. It starts in silence, in observation, in patience. And I already had something powerful on my side. Truth. Now I just needed structure. The next morning I started organizing everything. Every screenshot, every message, every timestamp, every pattern. I didn't just save them anymore. I arranged them. Like pieces of a puzzle. And slowly, the full picture became clearer. The timing of their meetings, the fake work excuses, the hotel bookings, the second phone activity, the hidden conversations. It wasn't just cheating. It was a system, a routine, a second life built with discipline. And that realization made me colder than I expected. Because betrayal feels emotional at first, but evidence makes it logical, and logic removes hesitation. At some point that day, I stopped shaking, stopped questioning myself, stopped asking, why me? Because I finally understood something. This wasn't something I caused. This wasn't something I missed. This was something he chose. Over and over again. And once you accept that, you stop blaming yourself and start planning forward. I decided to do something simple, but important. I copied everything, not just saved it. Copied it to a secure place he didn't know about. A hidden folder. A backup he could never delete. Because people who lie always think they are in control. They think deleting messages deletes reality. But reality doesn't disappear. It just waits to be revealed. And I was preparing the reveal. Over the next few days, I acted normal. I smiled when he spoke. I asked about his day. I played my role perfectly. And he believed it. Completely. He had no idea that while he was sitting across from me, I was already several steps ahead. Every excuse he gave, I noted it. Every late night, I tracked it. Every meeting, I verified it against patterns. And slowly, I stopped seeing him as my husband. I started seeing him as a case, a system, a problem that had a solution. One evening, I almost broke. He came home later than usual again, smiling, relaxed, like nothing in his life was complicated. He even touched my shoulder casually and said, "You look tired. Don't overthink things." And something inside me snapped quietly, because that sentence felt like mockery. He thought I was still the same, still unaware, still blind. But I wasn't. And that's when I knew. I couldn't wait much longer. That night, I made my final decision. Not revenge yet, not confrontation. Something more important. Timing. Because truth without timing is just emotion. But truth with timing is destruction. And I had both now. I knew where they met. I knew when they met. I knew how often. And I had proof that couldn't be denied. Now all I needed was the right moment. A moment where he couldn't talk his way out. A moment where everyone would see. A moment where truth would become unavoidable. Before sleeping, I checked everything one last time. Screenshots, notes, patterns. Everything was ready. And for the first time, I felt something strange. Not anger, not sadness, not fear, but control. Because I wasn't reacting anymore. I was directing. And that meant the story was no longer his. It was mine. I turned off the light that night. And as I lay beside him, I whispered to myself, "Tomorrow changes everything." Because I already knew. The next step wouldn't be silent anymore. It would be visible, public, and impossible to undo. The morning it happened started like any other day. That's the strange part about life-changing moments. They never announce themselves. No warning, no sign, just normal silence before chaos. He woke up before me, as usual, got ready, as usual, checked his phone, smiled slightly, as usual. Then he kissed my forehead and said, "I'll be busy today. Big meeting." And I nodded, like I always did. But this time, I wasn't the same woman who used to believe him. I was the woman who already knew the truth. Before he left, I did one last check. Not because I doubted myself, but because I needed certainty. And there it was again. His phone buzzed briefly. That same name. Just one letter. L. A short message preview appeared. "Same place tonight. Don't be late." My heart didn't break. It didn't freeze. It just confirmed something I already accepted. Today was the day. After he left, I moved quietly. No panic. No hesitation. Everything I had prepared over days, weeks, came together. I dressed normally, acted normally, even made breakfast like nothing was happening. But inside, I was readying something irreversible. Because today wasn't about guessing anymore. It was about revealing. I already knew where he would go. The cafe, the same place, the same routine, the same betrayal repeated over and over again like it was nothing. But today, something would be different. Because I wasn't going to watch from the car again. I wasn't going to sit in silence. I wasn't going to accept invisibility. Today, I was walking in. I reached earlier than expected. Sat outside first. Watched people go in and out. Normal life happening around something very abnormal. My hands were steady now. No shaking. No fear. Only clarity. And then I saw him arrive. And her. Together. Like always. Like nothing in the world could touch them. That confidence was about to collapse. I stood up, slowly, and walked inside. The cafe door opened with a soft bell sound. That sound felt louder than anything else, because everything inside that moment was about to change. He saw me first, confusion, then shock, then something else he tried to hide. She turned, and her expression changed instantly, because in that moment, they realized something important. This wasn't a coincidence. This wasn't a mistake. This was planned. For a few seconds, no one spoke. Just silence. Heavy. Uncomfortable. Unavoidable. He stood up slightly. "Why are you here?" he asked. A simple question, but the wrong one. Because I didn't come for answers anymore. I came with answers. I looked at him calmly, too calmly, and said, "I think you already know why I'm here." His expression tightened. Confusion turned into panic. But I wasn't finished. I placed my phone on the table. One tap, then another. Screenshots appeared. Messages, photos, dates, times, everything. All the pieces he thought were invisible, now displayed in front of both of them. Her face changed first. She looked away. Then him. Then the phone again. Because there was no escaping it now. No excuses. No explanations. Just truth. Raw. Unfiltered. Undeniable. And for the first time, he didn't have words. Because lies only work when truth isn't present. And truth was everywhere now. He tried to speak. I can explain. But I stopped him. Not loudly. Not aggressively. Just one sentence. Don't. And that one word ended everything he was about to say. Because some moments don't need arguments. They just need exposure. I picked up my phone again and said something they didn't expect. I didn't come here to ask questions. I paused, looked at both of them, and continued. I came here to make sure you can't lie anymore. Their faces changed instantly, because they realized something terrifying. This wasn't an argument. This wasn't a confrontation. This was the beginning of consequences. And I wasn't done yet. Not even close. The cafe didn't feel normal anymore. People were still talking. Coffee cups still clinked. Music still played softly in the background. But for me, everything had narrowed down to one table. One man, one woman, and one truth that could no longer be hidden. He looked around nervously now, like he suddenly realized this wasn't just a private moment anymore. It was becoming something bigger, something public, something irreversible. He tried again. Lower voice this time. Careful tone. Let's go outside and talk. That's what guilty people always try first. Control the environment. Control the narrative. Control the damage. But I didn't move. Because I wasn't there to be controlled anymore. I was there to finish the silence. I unlocked my phone again. Slowly. Deliberately. And started showing them what I had collected. Not one thing. Not two things. Everything. Messages he thought were deleted. Photos he thought were hidden. Locations he thought I never knew. Conversations he thought were private. Each swipe removed another layer of his confidence. Each image made the truth heavier and louder, until even the air between us felt different. She didn't speak at first, just stared, then looked at him, then back at me. And I saw it happen. The shift. Because she finally understood something too. This wasn't just about me finding out. This was about both of them being exposed. Together. At the same time. And that realization changes everything in a betrayal story. Because secrets are powerful. Until they are shared. People around us started sensing something was wrong. The silence at our table wasn't normal anymore. It was heavy. Visible. Almost uncomfortable. A few people glanced over, then looked again. Because emotional tension always spreads. Even strangers can feel it. And I could see him notice that too. His control was slipping. Fast. He finally spoke again. This is not what it looks like. A classic line, a weak line, a desperate line. I almost smiled. Because I had heard it in my head 100 times already. But hearing it out loud made it even more meaningless. So I responded calmly. If it's not what it looks like, then explain it. Silence. No answer. Because there was nothing left to explain. I placed one final thing on the table. A printed copy. Everything organized. Chronological. Clear. Undeniable. Proof that didn't require emotion to understand. Just reading. And I said, you don't need to lie anymore. Then I looked at him directly and added, because I already stopped believing you. That line hit harder than anything else, because lies only survive where belief exists, and I had removed mine completely. He sat down slowly, not angry, not defensive anymore, just defeated. Because when someone realizes they've been fully exposed, there's nothing left to fight. Only silence. And regret. She, on the other hand, stood up quickly, confused, angry. caught between two collapsing realities. Because betrayal doesn't just break relationships, it destroys alliances too. I took a breath. Not emotional, not shaky, controlled, and said, I didn't come here to ruin anything. A pause. Then, I came here to stop living inside a lie. That line didn't attack them. It didn't insult them. But it ended the story between us permanently. Because truth doesn't need aggression. It just needs clarity. I picked up my things, slowly, without rushing, and looked at them one last time. Not with anger, not with sadness, but with finality. And said, you can explain it to each other now. Then I turned away and walked out. Because sometimes, revenge isn't about shouting. It's about leaving people alone with the truth they created. When I stepped out of that cafe, the air felt different. Not lighter, not heavier, just real. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't guessing anything. I wasn't doubting anything. I wasn't chasing signs or patterns or lies. Everything was already revealed. Behind me, I could still feel the weight of what I left inside that room. But I didn't turn back, because turning back meant returning to confusion. And I was done with confusion. The drive home was quiet. Too quiet. No music. No calls. No thoughts I could fully hold on to. Just fragments of everything that had just happened. His face. Her shock. The documents. The silence. The moment everything collapsed at once. And strangely, I didn't feel victory. I didn't feel revenge. I felt something else. Stillness. Like a long war had finally paused. My phone rang once. Then again. I already knew who it was. But I didn't pick up. Not because I was scared, but because there was nothing left to discuss in circles. Everything he had to say should have been said long before I found the truth myself. So I let it ring. And for the first time, his voice no longer had access to me. While I was driving home, he was no longer controlling the situation. Not the story, not the narrative, not me. Because truth changes something fundamental. Once it is seen, it cannot be unseen. And no amount of explaining can rebuild what exposure destroys. He wasn't dealing with me anymore. He was dealing with consequences. By the time I reached home, my phone had started filling up. Messages, missed calls, unknown numbers, then familiar ones. But I didn't open them immediately, because I already knew their content. Denials, excuses, half-truths, regret dressed as explanation, but none of it mattered anymore. Because explanations are only powerful before exposure. After that, they become noise. I sat on the edge of the bed, looking around the house, the same house I once believed was built on trust. Now it just looked like space. Empty space holding memories that didn't feel real anymore. And I waited. For sadness. For anger. For collapse. But none of it came the way I expected. Instead, I felt tired. Not emotionally broken. Just done. Like I had carried something heavy for too long, and finally put it down. Later that night, he came home. I heard the door. I didn't move immediately. Just listened. Footsteps. Slower than usual. He stood in the hallway for a moment, before finally speaking. I made a mistake. A simple sentence. But not enough. Not anymore. Because mistakes are accidents. And this was not an accident. This was repetition. Choice. Pattern. Life. So I didn't respond right away. I let the silence answer for me. He tried again. We can fix this. That line used to have power, used to mean something, but now it felt distant, like something said in another life. I finally looked at him and said calmly, "This didn't break in one day." A pause. Then, "You built it like this." And for the first time, he had no response. Because truth removes places to hide. There was a moment where I could see it in his face. Not anger, not defense. Something worse. Realization. That I wasn't reacting anymore. I wasn't fighting. I wasn't trying to fix anything. I had already stepped out emotionally, and that distance cannot be reversed by words, only by time. And even then, not always. That night, after everything went silent again, I did something simple. I opened a blank page and wrote one sentence. This is where I stop explaining my pain to people who caused it. I closed the notebook, and for the first time, I didn't feel like I was waiting for revenge anymore. Because what I had already done had changed everything. And what came next was no longer about him. It was about me. The next morning didn't feel like a normal morning. It felt like a different chapter had already started without permission. No warmth in the routine. No comfort in silence. Just distance between us. Between everything we used to be. He tried to act normal at breakfast, like nothing had happened, like yesterday could be erased with a quiet morning tone. But I wasn't in that version of life anymore. He spoke carefully, almost rehearsed. "We should talk properly tonight." But I didn't answer immediately, because I already knew what that meant. Talks like that are never about truth. They are about repair, control, rewriting the story. And I had already stepped out of the story he wanted to rewrite, so I just said, "There's nothing left to repeat," and continued eating, calmly. That silence hurt him more than any argument could. By midday, things started shifting outside our home too. Not dramatically, not loudly, but steadily. The same people who once saw us as a normal couple were now seeing cracks. Whispers start where certainty ends, and once truth enters a space, it spreads without effort. A few messages came in from people I didn't expect. Mutual contacts, friends, people who had seen them together before. And suddenly, the private truth was no longer private. He tried calling me again, multiple times, then texting. Short messages at first, then longer ones, explaining, justifying, softening the truth. But I didn't respond, not out of anger, not out of revenge, but because responding would give him access again. And I had already closed that door, completely. That evening, he came home earlier than usual. He looked different, not confident, not defensive, uncertain, like someone realizing too late that the ground beneath them had already shifted. He stood in the doorway for a moment, before speaking quietly. "I didn't think it would go this far." That line said everything. Because it wasn't regret, it was surprise. And that difference matters. I looked at him, not with anger, not with tears, just clarity, and said, "You didn't think I would find out." A pause. Then, "You didn't think I would leave the role you gave me." That hit differently. Because roles are what people assign when they think others won't notice the script. But I had seen it clearly now, and I refused to play it anymore. For the first time, he didn't try to argue. He didn't try to defend. He just stood there, quiet. Because there is a moment in every betrayal story where excuses run out, and reality becomes too heavy to carry with words. That moment had arrived, and there was no escaping it anymore. I started packing small things, slowly, Not emotionally, not dramatically, just practically. Because leaving doesn't always look like running. Sometimes it looks like preparation. He noticed, but didn't stop me. Because stopping me would mean accepting it was real. And he wasn't ready for that final acceptance yet. Before I left the room, he asked one last time, "Is there anything I can do to fix this?" I paused, looked at him, and said, "You should have asked that when it still mattered." Then I turned away. Because some chances don't disappear suddenly. They disappear slowly, while being ignored. When I finally stepped outside that house, it didn't feel like revenge anymore. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like release. The kind you don't celebrate. The kind you just accept. Because the truth is simple. Some people don't lose because of what they did in the end. They lose because of everything they did before they were caught. And as I walked away, I finally understood something important. This wasn't the end of my story. It was the end of his version of it. The days after I left felt unreal. Not painful, not joyful, just unfamiliar. Like I had stepped out of a long dream that slowly turned into a nightmare. And now I was finally awake. There was no shouting anymore. No arguments. No lies to decode. No pretending. Just silence. And space. A lot of space. For the first time in a long time. I could breathe without tension in my chest. At first, he still tried. Calls, texts, voicemails. Short messages like, "We can fix this. I made a mistake. I miss you." But over time, even those stopped. Not because everything was resolved, but because reality had settled. And when truth becomes permanent, denial becomes pointless. Eventually, silence replaced everything he used to say. I expected to feel empty, or broken, or lost. But instead, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. Not the kind that comes from happiness, but the kind that comes from no longer carrying lies. Because lies don't just hurt you in the moment. They live inside you. They grow. They repeat. They confuse your reality. And now, they were gone. I heard things later. Through people. Mutual contacts. Fragments of updates I didn't ask for. He wasn't the same anymore. Not in a dramatic way, but in a quiet way. The kind of silence people enter when they finally realize they've lost control of something they thought would always stay. But I didn't feel revenge hearing that. Not anymore. Because revenge is a phase. And I had already moved past it. Sitting alone one evening, I thought about everything. Not the betrayal, not the exposure, but the lesson underneath it all. And I realized something simple, but powerful. Love without truth is just comfort. And comfort built on lies always collapses eventually, no matter how strong it looks from the outside. People think revenge is the moment everything is revealed. The confrontation, the exposure, the shock. But they are wrong. That is not the ending. That is just the turning point. The real ending is when you no longer feel the need to prove anything, when you no longer replay the past, when you no longer wait for justice, because you've already walked away from what hurt you. That was my ending. Slowly, I started again. Not dramatically, not instantly, just step by step. New routines, new silence, new mornings. No fear in checking a phone. No anxiety in hearing a notification. No guessing someone's intentions. Just life. Simple. Clear. Mine. I used to think strength was loud. Confrontation. Arguments. Revenge. But I learned something different. Strength is quiet. It's walking away without needing approval. It's choosing peace over answers. It's letting truth exist without letting it consume you. And that strength became mine. If I could go back, I wouldn't ask for less pain. I wouldn't ask for fewer lies. Because those experiences changed me. They stripped away illusions. They removed blindness. They forced me to see what I refused to see before. And even though it hurt, it freed me. And now, when I think about everything that happened, I don't feel anger anymore. I don't feel revenge. I don't feel loss. I feel something simpler. Clarity. Because sometimes, life doesn't break you to destroy you. It breaks you to show you where you were already standing in a lie. And once you see that clearly, you never go back.